Welcome to the I Hate Critics Movie Review Podcast. I am professional film critic Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff.
Howdy.
Jeff, where can people get your art?
JeffLassiter.com is my website. I have an Etsy store. As we're recording, it is National Cheesecake Day and Golden Girls Day. And I just added 4 Golden Girls prints that I forgot to add a year ago. So if you're a Golden Girls fan, you should go get those. Also have my Maxine prints that I posted on our Facebook page last week. And then I've got some stickers coming in, some Chapel Roan, some Maxine, some Pearl. So looking forward to those.
Excellent. Well, let's get into some movie discussions this week. Of course, the movie theaters continue to die a slow death. Just nobody going, nobody turning out. $211.4 million opening weekend for Deadpool versus Wolverine. Were you at a sold out screening?
I had to sit next to people both times that I went, and I don't like that. So yeah, pretty much.
It's been selling out across the country. It's a monster. I mean, and certainly it's the monster that everybody predicted it would be.
Yeah, it was. So I saw it Thursday afternoon, and I saw it again today. Because I had to go to the bathroom so bad on Thursday that I left, and when I came back, there was a big spoilery cameo, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I had to go see it again.
We'll get into those spoilers a little later on, but that box office talk we were discussing before, just how everybody was saying that movie theaters are dead and whatnot, and how Inside Out came out and just absolutely killed, just destroyed everything, and brought movie theaters back from the dead essentially. And that movie just domestically has made over $600 million and is already preparing to be eclipsed by Deadpool versus Wolverine, which, I mean, just continues to show that people do want to go to the movies. You just have to give them something to see.
Yeah, exactly. And this was very much something to see.
Absolutely. But before we continue the talk about Deadpool specifically, and of course we'll get into some Wolverine talk, I do want to point out one other news story this week about Robert Downey Jr. Have you heard about this? He's returning to the Marvel Universe.
Oh, yeah.
And this is apparently a very controversial thing for many people. He's going to be playing the character of Dr. Doom, I guess, essentially stepping in to save Marvel from the PR disaster of Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, but that's pretty much what it is.
There'd been a lot of talk about a lot of people who wanted to play this character or were thought to possibly be in line to play this character of Dr. Doom. He's a longtime villain in the Marvel Universe, one of the more well-known, and people are kind of turning their head and kind of shocked that it's Robert Downey Jr. that's going to play him.
Well, okay, a couple things. First of all, he is not the first person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or I guess it all is now that we've merged the two. It all is this Marvel Cinematic Universe. He is not the first person to play dual roles. Ryan Reynolds has played 2, almost 3 different roles. He was in Blade Trinity. He was in X-Men Wolverine Origins as a completely kind of different Wade Wilson, Deadpool, and Deadpool. Chris Evans, he was Johnny Storm, and then just a couple years later, he was Captain America.
It's not unprecedented.
It's like it's not unprecedented.
I should also point out that this is not the first Doom in the movies either, because Van Forstic had Dr. Doom. But nevertheless, that guy wasn't coming back anytime soon.
I have completely blocked that movie out until I saw that when they were doing the Fox retrospective thing at the end of Deadpool. I was like, oh God, I forgot all about that.
But yeah, I was a little bit surprised, but and especially since they're throwing, I mean, the rumors are upwards of $80 million that Robert Downey Jr. is set to make from playing Doom.
I someone pointed out on the internet today to take that um, two ways. One, he's getting $100 million,
Mm-hmm.
and B, he's not getting $80 million. But it's just been bandied out there because this is apparently the most controversial thing that's ever happened in the Marvel universe, and people have to endlessly talk about it when we're on the brink of death of a nation. So
This is
I
it's a nice little distraction to be able to talk about this again. But I
yeah.
mean, Marvel comes off now with the return of Robert Downey Jr. and with the Russo brothers coming back to make more Avengers movies. This doesn't look cool. It looks desperate.
Um well, a little background. He auditioned for the role of Victor Von Doom in when the uh, Chris Evans Fantastic Four was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So he's wanted to play this role, and he really really wanted that role. I mean, if he had gotten it, would he have played Iron Man? I don't know. Maybe it would have been kind of fun to watch all four actors from, or all five actors from the original Fantastic Four take on later uh, new MCU roles or whatever. But um, and in the comics, there is an issue or a couple issues, I guess. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not a huge comic person, where Tony Stark is actually Victor Von Doom. So I don't know how they're going to play it, if he's going to be a variant of Tony Stark as Victor Von Doom, or how they're going to do it, if they're going to do it like the comics. Because the MCU plays fast and loose with the comics, which is the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I knew something was coming because he's been talking lately. Like if somebody asked him, "Would you ever return to the MCU?" and he was like, "Oh, I miss it. I love it." So there, never say never. He said, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem like desperate. It seems like something that's been in the works for a while. And I guess in a way it kind of would be desperate because of the whole Jonathan Majors scandal. And um, what took me by surprise is I saw the Avengers Doomsday before I realized he was playing Doom. And I was just like, wait a minute, what's going on? Because wasn't it the Kang dynasty? And maybe I thought they were just going to recast Kang.
Mm-hmm.
So, which would have been fine either way.
Yeah.
But because Fantastic Four is my favorite uh, Marvel property, because Thing is my spirit animal, um, I'm looking forward to it. I'm I'm going with it because whenever I have said, "Oh, I don't like that" from Marvel, it always turns out really well.
Mm. I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to any of it. Like, for me, I do feel like it feels desperate. It feels like they're reaching back into the past because they know that their plan for the future has failed. I believe that they're looking at things like Quantumania and Ms. Marvel and saying, "Whoa, let's go back to let's give the fans what they want and go back to the thing that they enjoyed, which is Robert Downey Jr. and the Russos." Not that they should be banned from comic book movies or something, but it does feel like they're trying to throw everything at the wall to get this thing back on track. And I do think that much of this comic book movie boom, as much as Deadpool is very successful this weekend, I do think what was the plan of the Marvel universe has pretty much played out.
Um, I think if you are going to have to do something big to course correct, which there's no way around it. They're not going to hire Jonathan Majors back, no matter what anybody says. Um, I think taking one of your properties that is being introduced into the MCU is a good way to go. Um, I think that there's going to have to be something. I don't know if it'll be multiverse or if it'll just be, some sort of TVA thing that brings the Fantastic Four into the present day. But And I liked Quantumania. I love the Marvels. And that actually, I think, would have been much bigger had there not been the writer's strike, and they could have gone and talked about it and promoted it properly. So I think that the reports of the MCU death are vastly overstated.
I don't think it's a reflection of the quality of the movies. Like I also kind of liked Quantumania, and I really did like the Marvels. I thought that was a terrific movie. They just didn't do very well, and it just feels like these rapid fire announcements from Marvel do feel like they're grasping a little bit, and it does. I just that's just the impression that I came away with, especially from the Robert Downey Jr. thing. Does feel kind of like oh boy,
Well,
this is we really need him back.
I don't think they've been rapid fire, have they, though? Because it's San Diego Comic-Con weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of stuff, especially comic book stuff for SDCC weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like they showed some trailers and some concept trailers for Fantastic Four and other stuff. And I don't think that that's necessarily rapid fire. I think they've been building up to the announcement for a while, and they haven't said anything about Jonathan Majors or Kang or anything like that because they knew they were going to have to course correct, and they figured this out probably several months ago, and we're in talks with the Russo brothers and Robert Downey Jr. So I think it seems like it's sudden because it's San Diego Comic-Con. There were also like 16 different reveals of Star Wars toys this weekend, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so much. But then I was like, oh, it's San Diego Comic-Con, so of course everything comes at you at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be why it seems like it's so rapid fire.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, on the heels of Deadpool and Wolverine, which is, it's a huge step forward for the MCU and bringing Fox into the fold. So I think it all happened in one weekend. And I think it's a little overwhelming, but I don't think it's as, oh shit, as some people are making it out to be.
I'm one of those people making it out to be that way.
Well, I didn't want to call you out, but
no, it's fine. That is just how I feel about it. But let's talk about these two characters. Let's talk about Wolverine and Deadpool. And first of all, let's talk about Wolverine. When did you first find out about the character of Wolverine? Like, what was your first experience with it?
I knew about it from the comics because my granddad, my dad's stepdad, he read a ton of comics, mostly EC, but there were DC and Marvel in there too. And I don't know if it was a reprint or what, but I distinctly remember him having the first issue of Wolverine because I read it as a kid when I was bored in Missouri for 2 weeks every summer. But as far as, like really having a grasp on him, it was 2000. It was 1999, 2000, 25 years ago when the original X-Men movie came out.
I never read.
I was working.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
no, keep
I was
going.
working in a theater
Mm-hmm.
at the time in Des Moines, and I saw that movie probably, I don't know, 20 times. I think the only movie I saw more was Center Stage because I was the only person who would run that. So
I learned about Wolverine the way many people in Generation X did from Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith would talk about him. I believe he mentioned him in Mallrats and talked to that Stan Lee is in that movie, and there's just a lot of talk about comic books if you were in the whole Kevin Smith thing. And that's where I first kind of came to understand that this was a character that people were anticipating and looking forward to. And then, of course, there was the whole talk about the casting of Wolverine. They had a guy in place, and his name is escaping me now. He went on to be a villain in, I think, Mission Impossible 2, actually. But he was set to play Wolverine.
Doug Ray Scott.
He had the role, and then they recast with Hugh Jackman, and that's when this whole thing really kicked off.
God, could you imagine?
There's a whole other universe, where Doug Ray Scott is Wolverine. which would have been a great cameo for Deadpool and Wolverine, but we'll get
That
to
would have been funny.
that. But yeah, the X-Men in 2000 was an interesting experience. There was a lot of things stuffed into that movie. It was impressive in many ways and also kind of limited in many ways. I think they didn't quite have the technology to do what they wanted to do. Whereas like an X-Men movie today, I think would be far more convincing. There are elements of that one that's still like today when you watch it. It's only been 25 years, but technology has moved so far that some of the stuff in that movie seems almost rudimentary or elementary from the time.
Well, it's quaint if
Yeah.
you watch it. I haven't watched it in a few years. I was going to try to watch it this week, but my schedule is completely weird, so I didn't get to it. But I watching the behind the scenes stuff a little bit, and I'm like, oh, this is just they had no idea what was coming, And it's kind of it's that quaintness of it, and that oh my god, look what we're doing. We're having so much fun that I really like.
There's a particular innocence to it that certainly I think has become more evolved to something more sophisticated than that. And of course, they were aiming for blockbusters, so they meant that we couldn't necessarily get the Wolverine that people wanted. People wanted a very violent, nasty sort of Wolverine character, and obviously they were not going to get that from this sanitized, more blockbuster, family-friendly version.
Exactly.
It's impressive though that Hugh Jackman like did impress people enough that they gave it a chance.
Yeah, and knowing that Wolverine in the comics is supposed to be this little fire plug, of a guy, and they lean into that. He, the fact that now Hugh Jackman is known for being jacked man, he's always like not an ounce of fat on him when he does these movies. But looking at the original one and how soft he looks, I can kind of see why they're like, oh, he's not what we expect. So, yeah, I mean, I can see that now, um, seeing how he is whenever he plays Wolverine these days. But at the time, I didn't know anything about it, so I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever.
As the X-Men movies evolved, we did get newer shades, and I thought it was interesting what Hugh Jackman was able to do. Again, within the strictures of a PG-13 movie, he was still giving people a Wolverine that was at least familiar enough from the comic books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he certainly had the hair. When you
Oh.
start to get into the solo Wolverine movies, I think that's where he starts to the evolution
Mm-hmm.
of Wolverine starts to take place, because he doesn't have the constraints of the rest of the cast, and doesn't have to look a certain way around them because it's just him.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's an interesting point, and that it becomes, as the X-Men movies evolved, it became more of a Wolverine focus, and everybody was kind of seemingly fighting for air because Wolverine was not unexpectedly the breakout character.
I will say that I don't think as the trilogy, the original trilogy of X-Men movies, I don't think he was the most interesting character
Mm-hmm.
until the Wolverine. I think Magneto and Charles to me were always the most interesting character because they were kind of two sides of the same coin. Um, so that's
Perhaps from a storytelling standpoint and a quality standpoint, those two actors certainly are certainly incredible. But when it comes to fan interest and fan focus,
oh yeah,
it was all about Wolverine.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm saying that like until he started his own movies, though, I didn't get that. I mean, I got it, but I personally didn't see it until he started getting his solo movies.
which happened in 2009, X-Men Origins Wolverine. And, there's an anecdote that people forget about this movie. This was the first big kind of franchise movie ever to be completely pirated.
Mm.
It was entirely stolen.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. It was actually stolen and put online days before it was released. Not even the full movie. It wasn't even, it was not even a locked print.
No, it was, the scene where he becomes Wolverine.
But it wasn't even, it was a full length movie, and it didn't have any of the proper effects or music to it. And it got completely leaked online, which according to many, really, several million people got a chance to see it in the very primitive, 2009 era of downloads. It had to be quite something to try to see that full movie days before it came out.
Yeah, that's what I do remember that now. I remember the scene where he's in the pool and he's becoming Wolverine, and I remember that everybody was complaining about it because he said, "Oh, it just looks like shit," and it doesn't. I can't believe they're putting this out. And then when they put it out a couple days later, you saw that everything was where it was supposed to be.
It's just an interesting anecdote. The movie itself is directed by Gavin Hood, who's not a bad director, but he's also not necessarily a comic book kind of action director. And that really shows in this movie. There are elements of it that do work, and he's trying to give you more of the Logan Wolverine character and backstory. And he's got a lot of exposition to do to get through that. And it does kind of take this movie a little bit of ways to get going.
Yeah, there was, to me, so much that was kind of wrong with it. And I think that when I look back now, I'm like, okay, it falls apart at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily the the beginning or anything, because you get his origins. But once it gets to that third act, to me, that's where it kind of falls apart. And what they did with Deadpool was just, he's called the Merc with the mouth, and you take his mouth away. Who the fuck does that?
That was weird. That was a very strange thing to do. And, I think it was around 2007, 2008 that actually Ryan Reynolds had started talking a little bit about Deadpool and about wanting to play the character of Deadpool, and give him the first opportunity that he gets to play it. They don't give him Deadpool.
Yeah, they give him Mute Pool.
The whole thing feels so strange. The ending feels incredibly rushed, like they didn't know how to get there, and they just arrived and had to do something rather quickly. They're very confused about what they want to do with Victor, Logan's brother, Liev Schreiber. They kind of have him playing this sort of anti-hero character, even though he's been a horrific villain up until the end. It's truly kind of a bizarre thing that they're doing there. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with Gavin Hood, the director, just not being a comic book guy, not being an action movie director, and also not a guy who had a lot of experience with a big special effects movie.
Yeah, he just bungled all the action parts of it, and the big set pieces just were rushed and did not hold together well. And that, like you said, is because he was in over his head.
There was also kind of a thing about the movie where they were doing the promotion for the film running up to the opening, and they really thought they had something in that helicopter scene where Wolverine leaps off of a motorcycle and through a helicopter and destroys it, and then walks away from the fireball as the helicopter is falling. And they really thought they had the coolest scene in movie history, and people were kind of laughing at it.
Yeah.
Even by 2009, the idea of the cool guy walking away from a giant flaming wreckage behind him with a cigar in his mouth seemed kind of cliche.
Well, I mean, yeah, that nobody ever did it better than Iron Man, in my opinion.
There was also like there was again this movie also suffered from that back and forth over whether or not they were going to allow it to be an R-rated movie or not an R-rated movie, and that certainly didn't help this movie in trying to figure out what its tone was going to be.
Yeah, and I think Logan pretty much cemented the fact that any Wolverine movie should be R-rated.
Well, before we get to that one, there was the movie that everybody keeps forgetting about. I know I often forget about it and have almost no memory of it whatsoever. The Wolverine, directed by James Mangold. What is your memory of the Wolverine?
I remember liking it a lot better. I just thought the characterizations were much better of Logan and his surroundings. And I haven't, like I said, I haven't watched that one in a long time. I do remember, the settings in Japan and um, that the family intrigue that he just happened to be a part of. It seemed like a one-off issue of a Wolverine series comic book. Not too many real stakes at the time for me. Um, but it did. He's got his Ronin series and everything in the comics, and I thought that just kind of put that center stage. I felt worked. Something a little different that uh, Origins felt too much like it was trying to be an X-Men movie,
Mm-hmm.
and the Wolverine felt like it was finally an actual Wolverine movie.
Yeah, again, going back to X-Men Origins Wolverine for a moment, I believe they were trying to use that to launch like another whole universe of Fox Marvel movies where they could introduce again each of these X-Men characters, but this time in their own movie, in their own kind of origin story kind of movie. And when that one underperformed, Fox definitely they had a lot of issues. They became very disorganized about how they wanted to approach X-Men and the Wolverine after that, and that of course when they made this movie, they were basically trying to apologize for everything that happened with X-Men Origins, and in the process, they kind of messed up the tone of what they were going for here.
Yeah, yeah. This was much more serious and adult film um, than any of the X-Men movies had been, and um, the Origins Wolverine movie, which again I think is the tone that you have to have with Wolverine as a character. Um, if he's going to be on his own, he's got to be a more adult character and a more, thoughtful, um, mission oriented as opposed to a team oriented
Mm-hmm.
character. Um, which don't get me wrong, I think in the later Fox movies, they really uh, they really used him as a team member better than they had in uh, the original Fox days, in my opinion.
Mm. I think the part of the problem with that I have with the Wolverine 2013 is that there's this thing that they did where they're trying to get to a more adult oriented Wolverine, not quite as adult as people wanted it to be, which we'll see when they get to Logan. But uh, what happens oftentimes when movie studios specifically are trying to make something more adult, they mistake dour for being an adult. They mistake like being downbeat as being more adult. And no, adults like to have fun too. We kind of like kid stuff and nostalgia as well. You don't have to make it just completely just depressed, which is kind of what they went for.
Yeah.
A sort of depressed Wolverine.
Yeah, and I think they do that with a lot of superhero movies. Thor comes to mind.
Mm.
With the Dark World,
Hmm.
everything was mopey and not fun.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that with the Wolverine, I I think it could have been a little more, happy a little bit, but overall, I really enjoyed it much better than Origins Wolverine.
Weirdly, yeah, I did too. I think it is a better movie. Weirdly though, they also couldn't figure out if they wanted this to be like, even though it is Hugh Jackman, they're still kind of wishy-washy on whether or not they want there to be lore dating back to, the X-Men movies, or having the X-Men movies be part of what Logan Wolverine is going to be in the future. Like they seem uncertain about how they want to approach making Wolverine more adult, but also, do we still want to mention the other movies?
Yeah. Well, and I think they do that all throughout the entire X-Men series. It's just, okay, well, this part worked for us and this part worked, this part didn't. So let's kind of forget about this and we'll kind of redo the lore a little bit. Um, Even when that doesn't work, they kind of double down on it. And I think that that's because they didn't have like a vision. They didn't have something they were working towards
Hmm.
the way, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does,
Yeah.
or did. With their phases. And I think that if they had that vision going in, okay, we're going to do this story with the X-Men, and then we're going to break it off, and we're going to do this story with just each, like Rogue or Logan or Storm. If we're going to do these standalone movies, I think they kind of should have led up to that.
Hmm.
But that's hindsight. Like at the
Right.
time, I was like, oh, cool, an X-Men movie. This is pretty good. It had some clunker lines. Like, my favorite, and I will never forget this. Somebody pointed it out, and I've thought about it every time I've ever watched that. When Halle Berry as Storm
Hmm.
looks at Toad, and she says, "Do you know what happens when a toad is struck by lightning?" And he just looks at her. She goes, "The same thing that happens to everyone else." And it's just so it's like, wait, that's what you're going for with that? I've never ever forgotten that line because of that, because of how stupid it was. But if they had done like a Storm Origins, and then they had done Wolverine Origins and Magneto Origins, and I think they folded those into, the third, the Last Stand, and then they used some of those elements for um, some of the later Fox ones with the new cast.
Hmm.
I think that it might have been more cohesive, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about what a failure um, X Men Origins Wolverine was, and how great stuff like Logan was.
Yeah, I think they needed a Kevin Feige. They needed somebody who was
Yeah,
constantly in charge of this. Instead of that, it feels very corporate. It feels everything Fox did just feels like this, like a reaction to something else that is happening in what Marvel is actually doing with Disney. It feels like they're trying to play catch up all the time, and
yeah,
they're trying to create events as opposed to building a cohesive, movie universe.
and I think that really kind of took off after Iron Man came out.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, have you heard of the Avengers Initiative? And I was like, oh shit, we're gonna do the Avengers. And Fox was kind of like, shit. Okay, now we got to, start over, and we'll build up to Apocalypse or Days of Future. I think those were all reactionary, and some of them work better than others. But
So, uh, I'm not somebody who was a big fan of the next attempt to bring the X-Men back, that whole new X-Men universe that they built, but they did fold Wolverine into that eventually. What do you remember of that? Days of Future Past and the whole McAvoy verse.
well, First Class I think is one of the best X Men movies. Um, just in general. And I think it does not suffer without Wolverine. I mean, except for his cameo where they got their, PG-13 F-bomb in. Um, but I think that Days of Future Past is probably one of the better X-Men movies, just hands down. Um, and I think that was because they used these real stakes. People actually died in first class, so you knew that some of these mutants weren't necessarily going to make it out. Um, I think that the fact that they made Logan the star of it again really helped kind of meld the two universes together. Um, Hugh Jackman he kind of proved at that point that he was the kind of the anchor being of the X-Men
Mhm.
once and for all. So I think that really kind of cemented his legacy.
Fair
So
enough. I wasn't a huge fan. I did like First Class. I thought it was the best, at least of that group of films. But Days of Future Past, I thought just really plays so fast and loose with the idea of time travel that I don't think any of it really made any sense. Uh, you could just pull a couple of strings and that whole thing just kind of goes to pieces. Which, granted, if they had an idea of what the multiverse would look like, they might be able to make that more cohesive. But the inclusion of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in those movies just sort of felt like it felt like a nod to fans. It felt like giving fans what they wanted as opposed to giving the movie what it wanted, which is a full kind of restart on the whole X-Men idea.
well, like I said, I think that he really is um, the kind of the face of the X-Men, and the fact that he's the one who was kind of the linchpin of that particular movie is what I really liked about it. Um, it's not a great movie. I really enjoyed it though. And as far as time travel, pretty much any movie at this point with time travel, you could pull a couple threads and the whole thing kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I I like the interactions between him and the new cast just as much as I liked it with the old cast. And the fact that they brought them kind of all together was what I enjoyed.
I just felt like that reboot universe thing just kind of felt like it just again it felt like what the Wolverine felt like, kind of what X-Men Origins felt like, is yet another corporate attempt to try and create something to make it feel organic, even though it's clearly very not an organic build. It's just something that a corporation wants to continue to have this property and make it profitable, and it comes at the expense of having an actual vision for it.
When you get into stuff like Days of Future Past, though, I think that there this is Fox looking at like the Infinity Saga with the Avengers and how that's what they're kind of going for,
Mm-hmm.
is they're doing those because Infinity War and Endgame and the whole Thanos saga that started off with the Infinity Gauntlet. I think that was an event, a comic book event, and so was Days of Future Past. So the fact that they're going for that to kind of catch that Marvel Cinematic Universe feel,
Mm-hmm.
introducing the Sentinels and all that. Um, I I thought, yes, it's reactionary, but it's also kind of where they had to go because that's what people are expecting now.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, was the fact that they were going for something that was kind of out there.
I felt like they were going for something that was basically what the fans had asked them to do, which is, again, I don't feel like that is how you should be. I don't think it's how you should make movies. I don't think you should make movies just to try and please the fans. You should make movies that have an actual vision to them. And hopefully fans will like them. Your aim is to make movies that people like. But I'm saying having a vision that isn't like, there's a show, there are shows that just will like make episodes of their TV show that are just there to give the hardcore fans what they want. And while they're over there jerking off, getting exactly what they want, I'm just going, what's happening?
Well, yes and no. If you're gonna, okay. It's one of the things that the Star Wars sequel trilogy did that kind of bugged me a little bit in retrospect after watching them all as a whole is, and I completely love The Last Jedi. There is the one thing that everybody seemed to want, and we never got it, was our three heroes from the original trilogy together in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think that's kind of what, if there's a thing that I thought that the sequel trilogy was not having them together on at least one mission in the first movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And is that giving me what I want? Yes. And it's fan service, and I like fan service because I'm a fan. um, and I think that stuff like Days of Future Past, that was fan service. You want the Sentinels, you want these characters to come together and see each other from the past and the future. That's what you want, and if you get that, great. If they had said, no, we're gonna do Days of Future Past, but we're not gonna show you, the old actors interacting with the new actors, would have totally like undercut the fact that they were even doing this comic storyline at all. And if you're going to make comic movies, I think using bits and pieces from the different uh, comic book storylines that you're using as source material is an excellent idea, because that's why people are going to see them.
It to me, it just, the whole thing, it felt very forced. It felt, it didn't feel organic. It didn't feel like an organic decision. It felt like something that they were obligated to do. And that to me kind of held back any kind of feeling of admiration I had for it and appreciation. I also felt the direction of, at least especially Days of Future Past, was a little bit shaky. The screenplay is a little bit all over the place. But yes, the consistency is that Hugh Jackman does play the character Logan, Wolverine, incredibly consistently, even through multiple directors, multiple screenplays. You have to give credit, and I have to give credit to Hugh Jackman for, at the very least, maintaining that character and maintaining even the semblance of a through line, considering all of the various screenwriters who've had a hand in it. It's pretty impressive what he's been able to do.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
So that brings us to Logan, and we're getting into, of course, Deadpool in a little bit, but Logan is kind of the ultimate, like, this was supposed to be it. This was Hugh Jackman retiring this character. He's going to tell the ultimate Wolverine Logan story, and when I first saw it, I was not particularly impressed. I think the hype around it, the fact that it was going to be a real hardcore, hard R X-Men Logan movie, I was like, all right, let me see what they do. And I didn't feel like it was, I still felt like it kind of skimped on the R stuff. But then going back to see it a second time that same year and revisiting it, I did see kind of what people were getting at, and it improves on second viewing for me and further viewings after that. What was your first take on Logan?
It was a little almost too grim for me. I got what they were going for. I appreciated it, but I was just, I'm like, I don't have any fun whatsoever at all. But that's one of the things I liked about Wolverine was, you know, while he was a serious character, he always had that kind of lies where he was taking things seriously, but there was also a little bit of like a snark there. Just, you know, angry and ready to die. And I'm like, if you're ready to die, just die. So,
I definitely
but I
felt,
get what they were going for, and
yeah,
I appreciated it.
I
But
definitely
I was
felt the
just kind of like,
grim.
okay,
Yeah, that you're talking about, and
yeah,
and again, talking about what we were talking about earlier, where movies like this tend to mistake grim and dour for being more adult. That certainly does influence. That certainly is an influence on Logan. It is a better directed movie, though. It is a more cohesive movie. You can definitely see that both Hugh Jackman and the writer and director had a very strong vision for how they wanted to accomplish this and bring the character seemingly to a close.
yeah,
And that is a terrific ending. You got to give them that. The way
oh
Wolverine
yeah,
goes out is pretty fantastic with with a superior like hero moment.
and I thought that having him with X-23 really kind of offset the grimness of it a little bit. And I mean, it was still a very grim story, and everything was very kind of, a series of downers. And, but just the fact that he had someone to play that off of, where just a glimmer of hope for her was a little balancing, but not necessarily as much of a balance as I would have liked.
So let's get into Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds had wanted to actually play Deadpool for years. I mean, like I said before, but even before 2009, when he gets cast in X-Men Origins Wolverine and gets the chance to play a version of Wade Wilson, and certainly not the one he wanted, he'd always wanted to play this character. Even after he had taken on the Green Lantern role, his dream role was always going to be a Deadpool. First of all, for you, when did you first learn about the character of Deadpool?
I'd seen him, like just being comics adjacent. I had seen the character. I thought he was kind of cool looking. As far as paying attention to him, it wasn't until after Origins came out, and then I did a little bit of like looking him up and seeing what the character was about, and I was like, that's not at all who we watched in that movie. So
Yeah, I heard about him. That was the first I'd ever heard of the character of Deadpool, and I remember reading a lot of copy at the time about people being annoyed that this is not. How dare you, make Deadpool a character that doesn't have a mouth? He's known for having a mouth. He's known for being funny and snarky and weird, and he's only gotten weirder in the comics apparently over the years.
yeah,
That's the first I heard of him, and then I heard a lot more about him as the movie was coming up. There's a comic book YouTube channel, Atop the Fourth Wall, which I really enjoy, even though I don't read comics. That guy's hilarious at explaining how bad comics, and he talked a little bit about what Deadpool was actually supposed to be, and that was kind of my first inclination, like, oh, Ryan Reynolds is kind of perfect for that. Ryan Reynolds, at that point, before he'd made the first Deadpool, had already, like, he developed the Ryan Reynolds character, which is kind of this, Bugs Bunny style character who's flippant and smarter than everybody else, and willing to say things that you maybe shouldn't say, or just is kind of amazingly off the cuff. He's got this wit that is very quick, and certainly I think everybody who thought of who should play Deadpool thought of Ryan Reynolds based off of the Ryan Reynolds character, even at that point.
mm-hmm.
So he makes Deadpool, and it's a major hit. They let him do it the way he wanted to do it.
Well, I think it's important to mention too that that whole scene where they're in the car and they're fighting at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
that was the proof of concept.
Hmm.
That's he filmed that, like he bankrolled that and he filmed that so that Fox would see that it was a viable way to have Deadpool in a movie as opposed to a guy with lines all over him and no mouth.
It worked,
So
and they had the right director. Tim Miller is just the right guy for this movie. He's a guy who knows how to meld comedy and action, and kind of he knows how to do special effects. He's got a background with this kind of thing, and it just him the way his direction plays with what Ryan Reynolds is doing in the movie and the meta stuff that he's doing. It just kind of worked out perfectly.
yeah, it was just I hate to say this, but it's a perfect comedy for me and a perfect superhero movie for me.
Hmm.
In that it's the right character with the right actor at the right time.
You can see that. It just it works. All of the jokes hit. There's not a lame moment in the entire movie. There's just it's banger after banger when it comes to jokes. There's so many jokes in Deadpool. You can watch that movie hundreds of times and
Mm-hmm.
laugh loudly at various different jokes. I was the biggest surprise for me from Deadpool was Marina Baccarin, who comes in
Mm-hmm.
out of nowhere and immediately matches Ryan Reynolds' energy. And just the two of them together, that just single montage that is genuinely
Yep.
like romantic in the midst of all this chaos is absolutely amazing.
It's not often you can find a couple who works well and you don't see a whole movie about their relationship, but like a year's montage that is funny and profane and everything works about them as a couple. I think Marina Baccarin is one of the most gorgeous women I've ever seen in my entire life. Um, Jamie Lee Curtis posted a picture of young Janet Leigh,
Mhm.
and I've never thought that until she got older. I never thought Jamie Lee Curtis really looked like her mom, but Morena Baccarin looks so much like a young Janet Leigh before she went blonde and everything. It's uncanny.
Wow.
And I don't know if that lent, I saw her on V, on the remake of V, and I thought she was amazing. I don't know if the fact that, seeing her as that young Janet Leigh lends something for Deadpool or not, but I just think she's just incredible.
I think I'd seen her.
Um,
Well, she was on Firefly, I believe, and she was good on that movie. Good in that show, and she'd done some television work, and just I did not what I she just seems to come out of nowhere though, because you don't expect anybody to be able to keep up with Ryan Reynolds the way that she does.
mhm. Her timing is amazing.
And you just try her almost getting Ryan Reynolds off his game in that way it's not anything you expect, and it's absolutely perfect for the role.
Mhm. Yeah, she's really the heart of that movie,
Mm-hmm.
of the first one, um, which is why the second one doesn't work as well for me.
Oh, because there's not enough Marina Baccarin.
Well, I mean, there doesn't seem to be the heart. Their relationship really kind of taking center stage in that first one, and then kind of taking the background in the second one. That's one of the strikes against part two that I had.
Yeah, Deadpool 2 of course comes out in 2018, and it's incredibly highly anticipated. They even before it was released, they'd talked about X Force or whatever it was called, this new
Yeah.
X team that they're going to introduce, and of course that joke plays incredible in the movie. Not so much for people who were anticipating it going in, who were kind of left, what? But
Yeah.
um there's almost like an Austin Powers quality though to the way that they just kind of get rid of Marina Baccarin right away. Just she's gone, and we're into a different kind of Deadpool for a time. Uh, David Leitch is the director, of course, known very good action director, and known for making John Wick. He made John Wick just before this, and he's a terrific action director, but he doesn't quite have the kind of capability to weave comedy and action as well as Tim Miller did. Whereas Miller was going joke after joke after joke on top of having all of the action happening. There are times when Deadpool 2 kind of slows down to have actual character moments, and they're good, but they're not quite the rapid fire that you're getting, and especially the kind of rapid fire comedy that you got out of Deadpool.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I gotta say that one of my favorite parts of this entire trilogy is Leslie Uggams as Blind Al. Oh my God, if you had told me as a child watching Solid Gold and her, looking like my Aunt Marianne and being all glamorous and stuff, that she would be fiending for cocaine across 3 movies and calling everybody motherfucker, I would have checked both legs to see which one is being pulled, because man, she was funny.
Like the secret MVP of all 3 movies, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna get into, of course, the new movie now. And were you surprised though that like what happened to Zazie Beetz? Whatever happened to her character? What happened to?
I have no idea, and I missed her. I was like, she was one of the parts I really liked about Deadpool 2,
Mm-hmm.
and that she's just not there. There's no explanation for her not being there. You brought Yukio, who I liked a lot. I always thought that was really cute when she and Wade would talk to each other. But there's just like, she's just not there. And I don't know if it's because, there's just, not enough space, or what. A dropped line would have been great.
Some kind of recognition of Domino, because that character was pretty terrific. She was like the second best part of that, of course, after Deadpool himself. I thought that was she really had a lot of great lines. She was really snappy and fun. She was just a weird character too, because her superpower was just luck, which I thought is such a great idea for a character. So yeah, I was a little surprised that one just never comes up. But let's get into it. Deadpool and Wolverine. We're into this movie, and this is going to be spoiler heavy. We're just going to spoil everything, guys. If you have not seen it yet, that's that. Just so you know, this is going to be a full spoiler talk, because I don't think you can talk about this movie properly without getting into every aspect of it.
Yeah, there's no way not to talk about this movie without spoiling it.
So this is going into the multiverse. It's the time, what's it called? What is it that from Loki? Where are we at here? The beast, what's it called? The multiverse place where they're controlling time.
The TVA.
The TVA.
The time variant. Whatever. I don't know. It was in Loki.
So the meta joke here is that they're going to erase the Fox version of the Marvel universe unless Deadpool can do something to save it and merge it into the Marvel universe as we know it. It's a funny idea, and there's a lot of funny ideas in this movie, like the opening scene where Deadpool fights a bunch of guys from TVA and just kills so many people to what is it? Is an NSYNC song?
Yep. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye, bye, bye. It's a great opener. It's a great way to get started into this. Deadpool is essentially giving up being Deadpool. He's selling cars, which again is another funny idea after failing to get into the Avengers. He is somehow, we don't really get an explanation how he and Vanessa are apart, but he's back living with Blind Al and things are not going well. Did we get kind of an explanation as to what happened between him and Vanessa, or did I miss that?
Well, you do get it in a flashback later, like towards the beginning of the third act. She's basically telling him that he needs to think of everybody else once in a while instead of just him,
Mhm.
because all of his actions revolve around him. Now that devolves because we see that in his head through Cassandra. Is that her?
Mhm. Yeah.
Cassandra Nova. We see that through her digging around in his head later on in the movie, and then she kind of turns that against him. But that's the gist of it. Is she's telling him, and he can't really deal with it. So he says, "Just say you don't want to be with me."
Yeah.
And I don't know if she ever actually said that or if that was just something that was put into his head. But
That felt
she,
like a very underdeveloped idea to me.
yes, yes, it should have been upfront
Yeah, there's
towards the beginning.
that they should have had something more about I mean, because this is a couple that he has literally gone through time to save her life and bring her back, and he's obviously from the first movie. This is like the woman of his dreams. Like the romance of the first movie is like an iconic part of this movie series is that as those two characters together, and to have them just start the movie separated and we don't get a reasoning as to why, or at least not a good enough reasoning, it got Deadpool off to a little bit of a tough start in terms of the story. Now the action and the comedy are first rate. Like they're nailing the jokes early on. But what comes about in Deadpool and Wolverine for me is the direction is just bad. There's absolutely no direction in terms of the director. I'm not talking about the movie saying it's bad. I'm saying that the director, Shawn Levy, has absolutely zero control over the movie. He is just there to make sure that everything is in focus. And then we just have these series of skits with Ryan Reynolds being very, very funny. But the direction is not dynamic. The storytelling is choppy. There's the character development is almost next to nothing. And I know that they're not. This is not a character who's meant to grow or get better, but he has kind of. He's we've seen some layers to Deadpool, and here it feels again like we've compromised to get to just the jokiest of jokes and the violence of violence, and that's fine. It works, but it's not. I wanted something more cohesive. I wanted something that felt like a proper extension of what we were getting in the first movie, and it feels like we're devolving now already. Even though we're only in the third movie, it feels like we're already devolving to a one-note joke of Deadpool.
Well, look, Ryan Reynolds directed this movie,
Pretty much.
and I'm fine with that. He, aside from, very few people, he has embraced the character more so than almost anybody out there. I think as far as the movies go, I think he is kind of the linchpin that holds it all together. Um, Shawn Levy's fine. I don't. I'm not. I'm not going into this movie looking for, fine art. I'm looking at this movie going in for dick and fart jokes and the sexual tension between Wolverine and Deadpool. Um, I I read your review and I was just like, I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't. But it does not affect me the way it affects somebody who really loves cinema the way you do. Um,
And
you know what I
I
mean,
know
right?
I'm in the minority in that. I get
Yeah.
that. Most people are perfectly happy to be jerked off. I'd like to have us to have a relationship first.
Oh, you're obviously straight.
That's fine. If you want to just go have yourself jerked off, that's cool. Do you, man? I personally have to have a little bit of, a little bit more, a little bit of a development. And this is just
Yeah.
jerking off to me. This movie feels a lot like just jerking off. And I think part of that, Tim Miller and Ryan Reynolds were more of a team. They were a team working together. David Leitch then comes in and he's kind of a steward, but he's also talented enough to make it feel cohesive, like the story is going to build and grow, and we're going to get some developments along the way.
Well,
Sean Levy
here's the
is
thing,
just there
though.
to turn the camera on. That's all he's there
That's
to do.
fine. By the time you get to the third movie, that's all I care about. That's literally all I want is I want to watch the fights, I want to see the cameos, and I want to see and listen to the dick and fart jokes. That's honestly, I this movie was everything I asked for. So I can't say that, I needed more. I can't say that I needed, more style. Um, After, some of the quote unquote missteps that we talked about with the Marvel universe, um, the cinematic universe, I just wanted fun. I wanted something that doesn't take itself so seriously, like Logan or even the Wolverine. Um, and we've got an established universe that we're kind of shaken up a little bit, but we've established the main character in this movie is going to break the fourth wall. He's going to say obscenely profane shit and is going to, make fun of everybody around him at their expense, not at his, and sometimes at his. But
Yeah,
that's I don't need, I don't need Martin Scorsese to come in and direct
look,
Deadpool.
I don't either. I don't either. I don't either. I just think this movie could have been better with a director who was more of a partner with Ryan Reynolds as opposed to a guy who just turns on the camera. I think the movie could have been funnier and cohesive. It could have made more sense and still be Deadpool. I just don't think having a director there who has no hand at all. I mean, this Sean Levy's a terrible director. He's been a terrible director for years. I don't know if he's made a good movie. and this would be the best movie he's made if I thought he had any hand in actually making it. But he's truly just, and I'm exaggerating, guys. I know the director does more than, and I know he did more than what I'm giving him credit for. I'm saying that based off of his past and what I've seen of his movies, this is kind of who he is. His direction is very flat. It's very uninspired, and I think Deadpool could have been even better than it is. It's still good. It's still good. It's still a nice hand job, but it could have been a full-on relationship.
Oh, this was a blowjob. This wasn't a hand job. I mean, look, I saw this movie twice. I saw it on Thursday afternoon, and I saw it today, and completely enjoyed myself both times. A little more today because of the fact that I had to pee so bad on Thursday that I walked out right before Chris Evans showed up. And by the time I got back from getting a refill and unfilling, I was like, oh shit, and I'm so mad that I missed it the first time. But yeah, I just
was that your favorite? Was that your favorite cameo? Was it Chris Evans, or what other one did you like as much or better?
I will say this: he was probably my favorite cameo because I'm an easy lay when it comes to Fantastic Four movies, and I liked those movies. I will put those on in the background. I like them a lot more than most people that I've ever met. But I mean, he gave us the singular best end credit scene aside from Thanos showing up in the original Avengers. That post credit scene was the best, and I don't think I don't see how it'll ever top it. And I think it's just because he was so absolutely profane in it. So I think he was my favorite. I mean, we're since we're spoiling everything, when they go to the void, he meets Johnny Storm, who you think originally, because it's kind of played that way, that it's Captain America. You're like, holy shit, Chris Evans is Captain America in this, and then because he's wearing the red, white, and blue, but then you're like, wait, that's not the right blue.
Right.
I saw that and I was like, I can see I can see what they're trying to do, but and then it's like, he's like, flame on, and you're, oh shit. They have actually brought that movie into the MCU with Chris Evans, proving that you can be more than one character. Robert Downey Jr. And I, because I have a soft spot for those movies, I just thought that was great. I thought that his death scene was holy fucking shit. I could not believe that they did that to Chris Evans. And the fact that, I mean, basically Deadpool brought it on him, and the look on Wolverine's face, it's just like, and that's one of the things that I really loved about this movie was Hugh Jackman looking at Ryan Reynolds sometimes was just, the way he looked at him was hilarious.
So I'm gonna get I feel like I'm gonna get hate mail saying from people like, "Oh, why I can't believe you hated Deadpool and Wolverine." I don't hate it. I think it's good. I just think it could be great. I think it could have been great. I think there was the potential for this to be great, and I don't think it is great.
See, I do. And this is only the second movie I've seen this year twice in the theaters. Because we have so many movies to see, I rarely get to go see something for pleasure. That, like we don't have, the first time I saw this, it was complete pleasure. I had a great time. But this and Maxine are the only movies I've gone back to watch for myself. And I'm not going to see it a third time in the theater, but I will, this will be on more than Deadpool 2 ever was. So
fair enough. I really loved seeing Jennifer Garner. That was my favorite thing, was seeing her. And there's one modestly sentimental thing, is that I was glad that they didn't do the X-Force thing again. I thought they were going to do what they did to X-Force, which is to kill them off immediately. Like they walk out the door and immediately they just get turned to blood and guts the way that Chris Evans did, or Johnny Storm did. I thought that, oh God, they're going to do that, and it's just not going to be funny. They let them have more than just a moment. They let them have a full-on fight where they got to be heroes again and go out the way that they'd hoped to have gone out when they actually made their movies. I'm talking about her and Blade, and even Channing Tatum. Again, the man just knows how to steal a moment. He just really does. The guy does not get enough credit for being as funny as he is. And the way he creates his version of Gambit that never existed, I just inspired. That was the best part of the movie.
Oh, and he's like, "Who are your dialect coaches? The Minions?" Oh my God. Well, and the fact that they even did that, the fact that they put him in the movie, he's like the Nicolas Cage Superman. It was a movie that was in development hell for years. And he kept blocking out space for it, and that's why I'm convinced that while he's a big star, I'm convinced he's not a bigger star, because he kept putting off projects, because Gambit's going to start. We're going to start Gambit. And then they just didn't do it. The fact that he got to play it, and he played it so well. And Channing Tatum is a very funny actor, and I don't think he gets the credit for that.
Definitely.
But I think he's a very, very talented guy. And the fact that he played this, with just this terrible, awful mushmouth accent, made me laugh every time he was on screen.
I loved that. I loved the choice. I thought it was just I loved the costume. And again, Channing Tatum doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's just a very funny guy. It just has a natural ease to him that he knows never to be the coolest guy in any room that he's in. He doesn't try to pretend that. And that is, to me, just shows that he's he doesn't have an ego. It takes me back to This Is the End, where he goes so far at the end of that movie in his cameo that you're like, oh my God, I think he's ending his career. But he's making you laugh the whole time. And it just demonstrated just his willingness to be the butt of the joke. and to show you that he understands that he can be the butt of the joke and it doesn't take anything away from him.
He's in on it. That's the best part is if he wasn't in on it and they were making the butt of the joke, it's one thing. But the fact that he is there, you know, making the jokes about himself, kind of, it works so well.
That's the part of the movie I enjoyed the most. I enjoyed the movie all the way through. Like I laughed all the way through. Again, I'm focusing I've said. I think I feel like I've been too negative about it. I like this movie a lot. I laughed a lot. I don't think it's a cohesive movie. I think it's a series of skits narrated by Ryan Reynolds. I think it's like a series of Marvel Universe skits. But I do like this movie a lot. I like a lot of the jokes. I laughed a lot. I wanted more Marina Baccarin. I wanted, more of the stuff in the universe of outside of the void that they're in, which they spend most of the movie in. And I thought the villain that they came up with in the void was so overpowered that, not that anything in Deadpool is unbelievable or anything, but just she's so overpowered that it kind of kept taking me out of the movie and taking me out of my enjoyment of that. Cause like, why doesn't she just end them right now? It seemed to just pop up repeatedly in my head. And again, I think a director with a stronger hand might have forced them to come up with a way to make that less distracting.
Fair enough. Yeah, I fully enjoyed it. There's very few things I would change. The fact that I heard that Like a Prayer was going to be used at a pivotal moment in this movie and couldn't imagine where they would put it and how absolutely perfectly it went. All I got to know is they said that they went to Madonna and they said, we want to use it. This is where we want to use it. And they showed her and she gave them one note. She goes, oh, yeah, you can totally use it, but I'm giving you one note. I really want to know what that note was.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that could possibly have been. There's one missed opportunity that I do want to point out in terms of jokes. I mean, not having the X-Men Origins Wolverine version of Wade Wilson as one of the alternates, that was a missed opportunity. I know he's got some trauma related to that. Like he doesn't want to remember that happened. But I thought that would have been hysterical for that version of Deadpool to come back and be part of that.
Yeah. That would have been, and him getting to like shoot him again would have been great. Or just completely dismember him again.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's very similar to the joke he did about, him killing Ryan Reynolds as he's reading the script for Green Lantern.
Yeah.
It would have been a very kind of a similar joke. But I mean, you're already doing, endless amounts of fan service in this movie, so why not that? I also didn't care for that. There's the version of Deadpool that's like the really nice guy who has the dog. I didn't understand what the joke was with that. That joke just did not land for me.
Well, what I liked is I knew he was Nice Pool as soon as he started talking in a Canadian accent.
See, I'm not familiar.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not familiar with Nice Pool, I guess.
I'm not either, but the fact that he came on talking with a Canadian accent and was super, nice and whatever, and that he's the only one who doesn't regenerate, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, no, that just didn't do anything for me. I didn't feel like there was any, I don't feel like they came up with a good enough joke for that character.
Well, using him as a human shield and then having his head explode in front of him, I thought that was pretty funny. Because he's the only nice one. Everybody else is a dick. And,
Again, that's like Austin Powers did that joke. Austin Powers did that same joke 20 years ago.
I don't even remember anything about Austin Powers.
Well, I do, and yeah, that joke is that was an Austin Powers joke. tell you, I do like this movie. I do recommend. I do recommend Deadpool and Wolverine. Like I said, I just think it could be better. That's all. That's my only point. That's my only objection. Really, is that it could. There are elements of this that could have made this a better movie, or even I think an iconic kind of great movie. I think there's had that potential, and I don't think it meets it.
Fair enough.
All right. Next week, we're talking about the movies of M. Night Shyamalan once again. We're going to be delving into The Sixth Sense, The Village, Lady in the Water, and of course, the new movie Trap. There's just not a lot of new movies. There's like one movie a weekend these days. Back in the day when we started the show, we used to have like 3-4 movies a week that we could fall back on and talk about. And lately, it's just been we're lucky to get one.
You know what? Some weeks I'm fine with that because some weeks we have 3 or 4, and I'm like, I cannot A, afford that, B, keep up with it. Which is why you're the professional film critic, not me.
And no, Harold and the Purple Crayon doesn't count. Nobody needs to talk about that at all. That's not a movie.
And apparently that Bette Midler movie came out this week that I didn't hear anything about it.
I didn't even notice. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, thanks.
Have a good night.